Ethan had always been curious about the stars. Since he was a boy, he had spent countless nights staring through his small telescope, wondering if there were other worlds beyond Earth. That curiosity had turned into a career. Now, he was part of a small human expedition sent to explore a distant planet in a remote galaxy. The planet was called Zythera, a land of shifting deserts, strange plants that glowed faintly in the twilight, and skies painted in colors humans had no names for. It was beautiful but dangerous, and no one had dared to explore it in such depth before. The team had been on Zythera for 2 weeks. They were tasked with mapping the terrain, collecting samples, and observing any signs of life. Most days were quiet, filled with careful walking across the sandy plains and endless rock formations. But Ethan liked the quiet. It gave him time to think and watch. He often wandered slightly ahead of the group, using his sensors to scan the land for anything unusual. One day, while the team was moving toward a canyon known for its rare minerals, Ethan noticed something strange on the horizon. At first, he thought it was a large rock shaped strangely by the wind. But as he got closer, he realized it was not a rock at all. It was moving, slowly, and in a way that suggested life. He hurried back to the team, waving his arms. "Wait, I think I found something," he shouted. The team gathered around and Ethan led them toward the figure. What they saw made them stop in shock. It was a being unlike anything they had ever seen. She was humanoid in shape, but far more delicate and graceful than any human. Her skin shimmered faintly, like liquid silver under the sun, and her hair floated around her head as if it had weightless energy of its own. She was lying on the ground, barely moving, and her breathing was shallow. Her clothes were torn and her body was covered with cuts and bruises. Ethan felt a surge of urgency. He had seen injuries before, but nothing like this. Her entire aura seemed fragile, as if she might disappear at any moment. "She's alive," he whispered, kneeling beside her. He carefully lifted her head onto his lap and checked her pulse. It was weak, barely there. One of his team members, a medic named Lena, arrived with a portable scanner. She shook her head as she saw the readings. "This is bad," she said softly. "She's losing blood fast. If we don't do something, she won't make it." Ethan looked down at her. She was beautiful in a way that felt otherworldly, but he did not have time to think about that now. She needed help. But there was a problem. Lena's medical tools were designed for humans. The scanners were giving readings, but they made it clear that her biology was different from anything on Earth. The human body could not survive what she had gone through, but she was clearly a living being in desperate need of help. Ethan remembered a lesson from his early studies in xenobiology, the study of alien life. Some species could adapt to foreign blood, in small amounts under certain conditions. It was risky, incredibly risky. Human blood might harm her, or it might even kill her. But if they did nothing, she would certainly die. He looked at Lena. "We have no choice," he said quietly. "I'll do it." "Are you sure?" Lena asked, her voice trembling slightly. "You don't know what will happen. It could hurt you too." Ethan nodded. "I know, but we can't just leave her here. Not like this." He set up the emergency transfusion kit, shaking slightly from adrenaline and fear. The alien princess, as he thought of her, opened, her eyes briefly. They were a deep, glowing shade of violet, full of pain and confusion. She tried to speak, but only a faint, strange sound came out. Ethan gently placed his hand near hers, trying to reassure her. Somehow, even though they did not share a language, he felt a connection, a silent understanding that he wanted to help her. The transfusion began slowly. Ethan felt a strange warmth as the blood moved from him into her veins. For a moment, everything seemed normal, but then the princess's body twitched. She gasped and a faint glow started to spread from her chest. It was not a bad reaction. It was as if her body was absorbing the blood in a way no one had expected. Ethan felt a sharp pull in his mind, almost like he could feel her thoughts, or her feelings, or something in between. Lena watched in astonishment. "I've never seen anything like this," she murmured. "It's working." Minutes passed, each one feeling longer than the last. Ethan could feel the strain on himself, but he kept going, determined not to stop. Slowly, the princess began to breathe more easily. Her movements became less erratic. Her glowing eyes opened fully, and she looked at Ethan with something that almost seemed like gratitude or recognition. He could not be sure. Finally, Lena called a halt. "She's stable, for now. That's more than I thought we could do." Ethan let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. The princess's hand twitched and she reached toward him, her long fingers brushing lightly against his arm. There was no way he could understand the gesture completely, but it felt like a silent, "Thank you." The team gathered around her carefully, shielding her from the harsh desert winds. Ethan stayed close, feeling an odd sense of responsibility. He did not know who she was or why she had been alone in such a dangerous place, but he knew one thing. He had saved her life. And somehow, that act of courage had changed something between them, though he did not yet understand what. As the sun began to set on the alien horizon, casting long shadows across the dunes, Ethan sat there beside the princess, watching her chest rise and fall steadily for the first time since he had found her. The planet around them was vast and unknown, but for the first time it felt a little smaller, a little less frightening. They had met by chance, under impossible circumstances, and their lives had just become intertwined. Ethan could not help but wonder what would happen next. Who was she really? Where had she come from? And why did he feel, deep in his chest, that this encounter was just the beginning of something much larger than himself? As night fell, the sky shimmered with alien. Stars in the desert became quiet, except for the soft sounds of their breathing. The human had given his blood to save the alien princess, and in doing so, he had stepped into a story that was already beginning to unfold. A story filled with danger, mystery, and perhaps a bond that neither of them could yet understand. Ethan knew sleep would not come easily, but he did not mind. He would stay awake, watching over her, ready for whatever came next. This was only the start, and somehow he sensed that his life, and hers, would never be the same again. The night on Zithra was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen on Earth. The sky shimmered with colors that shifted from deep purples to glowing blues, and the twin moons reflected faint light across the desert. The air was cooler now, but still dry, carrying with it a faint, sweet scent from alien plants he could barely identify. Despite the calmness, Ethan could not shake the tension that lingered. The princess, Liara, as he had finally learned to call her from the symbols she traced, in the sand was still weak. Every breath she took was shallow, every movement careful. He had saved her life, yes, but now came the harder part, keeping her alive. Ethan and Lena had set up a small shelter using the team's portable tents, reinforced with energy shields to protect them from the cold night wind. Liara lay on a soft surface and Ethan sat beside her, monitoring her vitals. The transfusion had worked, but her body still reacted strangely. Sometimes her skin shimmered with colors he had never seen, and once, her hand glowed faintly when it brushed his arm. He did not understand why, but a part of him sensed it was a form of communication, or a response to the human blood he had given her. "Do you think she understands us?" Lena asked, her voice low, almost a whisper. She was kneeling beside Ethan, checking their limited supplies of food and medical equipment. "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "I think, maybe. She reacts to our presence, and sometimes I feel like she knows what we're saying, even if she doesn't speak our language." Liara's eyes opened slowly as if she had heard them. She focused on Ethan, blinking a few times. Then, in a motion that seemed both careful and deliberate, she lifted her hand slightly. Ethan reached out gently, letting their fingers brush. He could not explain why, but a strange warmth spread through him, as if her body, or her mind, recognized him in a way beyond ordinary understanding. That night, sleep was impossible for Ethan. He stayed awake, keeping watch over her, watching for any sign of trouble. Occasionally, Liara stirred, murmuring sounds he could not understand. But then she would calm again, settling back as if reassured by his presence. There was something fragile about her, yet something profoundly strong underneath. It was hard to describe, but Ethan felt certain she was no ordinary being. She was a princess, yes, but she was also a fighter, a survivor, and perhaps more than that, a key to something he could not yet comprehend. By morning, the desert sun rose slowly, casting golden light across the dunes. The colors of the sky reflected on Liara's skin, making her shimmer like the planet itself had chosen to embrace her. She moved slightly, enough for Ethan to notice. Her breathing was steadier, her pulse stronger. It was a relief, but it did not remove the tension in his chest. Something had changed during the night. He could feel a strange connection, subtle but real, linking him to her in ways he could not explain. Lena approached cautiously. "Her vitals are stabilizing," she said. "The transfusion must have done more than just keep her alive, but Ethan, there's something unusual here. Her physiology, it's adapting to your blood. This isn't normal." Ethan frowned. "Adapt how?" "She's reacting to it. At times her heart rate matches yours. Sometimes I see small pulses of energy, like she's drawing strength directly from you. I don't know if it's safe long term." Ethan considered this quietly. He had expected risks, but he had not anticipated this. Yet, despite the uncertainty, he did not regret his decision. He had saved her life, and now he had a responsibility to protect her. He looked at Liara, lying there quietly, and felt a determination he had never known before. He would not leave her. Not now. Not ever. The next few hours were tense. The team worked to fortify their shelter and ration their supplies. They did not know if other aliens were nearby, searching for Liara, or if the planet itself held dangers they could not see. Ethan spent much of this time beside her, observing her responses, learning small details about her behavior. She seemed drawn to light, her eyes following the sun or the glowing plants with fascination. Occasionally, she reached toward Ethan, or mirrored his movements as if trying to communicate without words. By midday, Liara was able to sit up slightly. Ethan offered her some water, carefully monitoring her reactions. She accepted it, her movements hesitant, and drank slowly. He noticed her eyes. The deep violet of her irises seemed to study him intently as if trying to understand him. For the first time, she made a sound that resembled a word, though it was unfamiliar. Ethan reached out and gently touched her hand. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe. You're not alone." She tilted her head, blinking slowly, and for a moment Ethan felt a wave of understanding pass between them. It was subtle, almost like an instinct. She trusted him. That trust, fragile as it was, made Ethan's chest tighten. He realized something important. He was no longer just a human explorer on a distant planet. He was a protector. And protecting her meant understanding her world, her needs, and perhaps even her heart. Later in the afternoon, the group decided to explore the nearby area for additional resources and shelter materials. Ethan stayed behind with Liara, wanting to ensure she was safe. He noticed something strange as he observed her. Her body seemed to respond to his presence in ways that went beyond the usual. A faint glow appeared along her veins, and once, her hand hovered near his chest, as if sensing his heartbeat. The connection was growing, subtle but undeniable, and Ethan felt both awe and caution. "Ethan," Lena said, walking back toward the shelter, "we need to plan. She can't stay here alone for long. Other aliens could be looking for her, and if they find her with humans." She left the sentence unfinished, but Ethan understood. The situation was dangerous. He needed to make sure Liara could be moved safely. But the connection he felt made the thought of leaving her alone unbearable. As night approached again, Ethan and Liara spent more time in quiet observation. He tried to communicate using gestures, showing her simple signs and pointing to objects, hoping she would understand. At first she only watched, but slowly she began to respond. A nod here, a gesture there. The communication was primitive, but it was there. They were beginning to understand each other. Ethan noticed other changes too. His own senses felt sharper when he was near her. He could sense her mood shifts, almost like a faint echo of emotions passing between them. When she was scared or in pain, a weight settled in his chest. When she was calm or curious, he felt a strange lightness, as if the bond between them was affecting more than just her. One night, as they both sat outside the shelter, looking at the alien stars, Liara reached for Ethan's hand again. This time, she did not just touch it lightly, she held it. He could feel the warmth of her body, and the faint glow that ran along her skin seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. Ethan did not speak. He only held her hand in return, understanding that words were not necessary. Their connection had become real. For Ethan, that night changed everything. He realized that saving her life had done more than rescue a stranger. It had created a bond that neither time nor distance could break. He did not know what challenges lay ahead, but he knew one thing with certainty. He would stay by her side, through danger, uncertainty, and the unknown. She had trusted him with her life, and he would not betray that trust. By the time dawn came, the bond between human and alien was undeniable. They were connected in ways neither could fully understand, yet both could feel. Ethan knew their journey had only just begun. Together they would face whatever dangers the planet held, whatever enemies might come searching for Liara, and whatever mysteries lay hidden in the desert sands of Zithara. And for the first time, Ethan felt that being on a distant planet surrounded by the unknown was exactly where he was meant to be. The bond between Ethan and Liara had grown stronger with each passing day. The more time they spent together, the more Ethan realized that what had begun as a life-saving transfusion had created something far more profound. It was not just a connection of survival. It was as if their minds and hearts were slowly learning to understand each other, without the need for words. He could feel her emotions, her hesitation, her curiosity, and sometimes even her fear, as if they were his own. And when he felt her fear, he also felt a drive to protect her that went beyond instinct. It was a sense of destiny. Liara, too, was changing. She had regained most of her strength, though her body was still recovering from the injuries she had suffered. Ethan noticed small things, how her gaze lingered on him, how her hands reached out instinctively, how she sometimes mirrored his movements. At first, he thought it was simple mimicry, but over time he realized it was more than that. There was a subtle rhythm in her gestures, a silent language that only he could feel. Their connection was growing into a form of communication that went beyond speech, one that was instinctive and natural. But their bond was not without complications. One evening, as they were resting in the cavern, Ethan suddenly felt a sharp pull in his mind, a sense of urgency and alarm coming from Liara. Her eyes were wide, glowing faintly with energy, and she gestured toward the entrance of the cavern. Ethan understood immediately. They were not alone. The alien factions that had been searching for Liara were close. Ethan quickly gathered the team and helped Liara prepare for a potential confrontation. Despite their exhaustion, they moved with purpose, using the labyrinthine passages of the cavern to hide and observe. Ethan could feel Liara's tension through their bond, and it gave him an almost psychic sense of the enemy's movements. He could anticipate their approach, sense when they paused, and predict when they would try to enter. It was as if the connection between them had sharpened his senses beyond human limits. When the aliens finally arrived, it became clear that they were not mere soldiers. They were scouts from Liara's own people. Their armor and weapons were unfamiliar, but their focus was entirely on her. Ethan realized that this was not just a matter of survival, it was a political situation. Liara was royalty, and her people would stop at nothing to recover her. The danger was not just physical, it was cultural, and Ethan understood that one wrong move could endanger them all. Liara looked at him, her violet eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. Ethan reached out, holding her hand, and he could feel her pulse through the connection they shared. "We can do this," he whispered. "I won't let anything happen to you." The alien scouts paused at the cavern entrance, scanning for any signs of movement. Ethan and Liara remained still, blending into the shadows. Slowly, he realized that her people were not entirely hostile. Their hesitation suggested they were searching for someone, not necessarily intending to harm, but trying to reclaim what was theirs. That knowledge brought Ethan a small measure of relief, but he knew they could not simply reveal themselves. Not yet. Over the next few days, Ethan and Liara worked together to prepare for a meeting with her people. The bond between them allowed them to communicate silently, planning strategies and anticipating responses. Liara taught him small aspects of her culture, gestures and symbols that held meaning in her society. Ethan tried to teach her about human ways, though he knew much of it would be foreign and confusing. Still, they learned from each other, building trust and understanding that transcended their species. One morning, as they surveyed the desert from a high ridge, Ethan noticed something unusual. Liara's body was glowing faintly, more intensely than usual, and he could feel a surge of energy in their connection. She pointed toward a distant structure, an ancient temple partially buried in the sands. It seemed to resonate with her in a way that was instinctive, almost magnetic. Ethan realized that this temple might hold answers about her people, her past, and perhaps even the significance of the bond they shared. They approached cautiously, using the terrain for cover. As they drew near, Ethan could sense Liara's mixture of awe and hesitation. Her hands trembled slightly, and through their bond he felt a ripple of uncertainty. But he also felt determination. She wanted to understand, to confront whatever secrets lay within the temple. Inside the temple was ancient and mysterious, filled with glowing symbols and strange carvings. Liara's eyes widened as she recognized some of them. She moved slowly, touching the walls, tracing patterns with her fingers. Through their connection, Ethan could sense flashes of memory, her childhood, her royal duties, her family. The temple seemed to be a repository of knowledge, containing information about her lineage, her responsibilities, and perhaps the role she was destined to play. Ethan watched silently, feeling the depth of her emotions. There was pride, yes, but also fear and doubt. She had been thrust into danger, relying on a human to save her, and now she was discovering the weight of her own heritage. He reached out, holding her hand gently, and through their connection he offered reassurance. "You are not alone," he told her silently. "We will face this together." The temple revealed more than just history. There were warnings, prophecies of threats to her people, and hints of a mysterious force that could endanger the planet. Ethan realized that their journey was not just about survival, it was about preparation, understanding, and alliance. The bond between them was no longer just a tool for life. It was a bridge between worlds, a connection that could unite two very different species against common dangers. As they left the temple, Ethan could feel the strength of their bond more than ever. Liara walked beside him, confident yet cautious, aware that their actions would shape the future of her people and perhaps even the fate of the planet. They were no longer just human and alien. They were partners, linked in a way that transcended species, culture, and time. Ethan knew that challenges lay ahead, both from those who sought to harm Liara and from the responsibilities her lineage imposed. But he also knew that together they could face anything. The connection that had begun as a life-saving transfusion had become something far greater, a bond of trust, understanding, and mutual strength that would guide them through the trials to come. And as they camped under the alien stars that night, Ethan felt a quiet certainty. Whatever dangers awaited, whatever enemies might rise, the bond they shared would be their greatest strength. It was no longer just about survival. It was about building a future together, one step at a time. The following days on Zithra passed with a tense mixture of relief and unease. Liara's condition continued to improve, thanks to the human blood Ethan had given her. But the more she recovered, the more Ethan realized how fragile their situation truly was. The desert was vast and the team's small shelter was exposed. They were visitors in an alien world, and there were forces at work that they did not fully understand. Ethan spent most of his time beside Liara, observing her reactions and learning about her strange alien physiology. She was adapting to his presence in ways he could not explain. Her breathing and heart rate seemed to synchronize with his, and sometimes he felt a subtle energy passing between them, almost like she was communicating without words. It was a connection that made him feel responsible for her in a way that went beyond mere duty. Despite the calm moments, danger was never far away. On the second day, the team detected movement on the horizon. Ethan activated his binoculars and scanned the desert. In the distance, he could see figures moving swiftly across the dunes. They were humanoid, but wore armor that shimmered in the sunlight. They were not humans. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. Liara stirred at the sound of distant footsteps, her violet eyes widening in fear and recognition. "They've found her," Ethan said quietly, his jaw tightening. Lena checked their sensors and confirmed it. "They're coming this way. Whatever they are, they're fast and armed. We need to move now." Ethan gently shook Liara awake. She was confused at first, but when she saw the approaching figures, her instincts took over. She tried to rise, but her strength was not fully restored. Ethan helped her up, supporting her carefully. He could feel the faint energy flowing from her body, and for a moment, it reminded him how close their bond had become. They were connected in ways that defied understanding, and it gave him a strange courage. The team quickly packed their shelter, taking only the essentials. They moved cautiously through the dunes, trying to avoid being seen. Liara leaned on Ethan for support, her fingers clutching his arm. He could feel her tension, her fear, and in response he felt a surge of determination. He would protect her, no matter what. As they moved, Ethan tried to communicate with her, using gestures and simple words. She responded, nodding and pointing, showing him where it was safe to walk and where it was dangerous. Slowly, he began to understand her alien ways of signaling, and she began to trust him completely. The bond between them had grown stronger. With each passing hour, their pursuers were relentless, moving with purpose across the desert. Ethan and the team took detours through rocky areas, using the terrain to their advantage. But it was clear that these aliens were skilled trackers. They had come for Liara, and they would not stop until they found her. At one point, Ethan and Liara were separated from the rest of the team while crossing a narrow canyon. Ethan held her close, shielding her from view. She looked at him with wide, anxious eyes. He reached out, touching her hand gently. The faint energy that always seemed to pass between them surged stronger this time, as if her fear had amplified the connection. Ethan felt a strange clarity, as if he could sense what she was thinking. "You're safe with me," he whispered. "I won't let anything happen to you." Liara blinked, and for a brief moment she seemed to smile. It was subtle, but it gave Ethan hope. Even in the midst of danger, their connection brought comfort. When they finally reunited with the team, they realized that their pursuers were not far behind. Ethan and the others made a quick decision to find a more secure place to hide. Lena suggested an abandoned cavern system she had discovered earlier, which offered natural shelter and a way to monitor the desert outside. They moved quickly, bringing Liara with them. Inside the cavern, the team could finally rest. Liara sat quietly, her glowing skin dimming slightly as she relaxed. Ethan remained close, watching her every move. He could see that she was still recovering, and he knew that the danger was far from over, but for now they were safe. Over the next few days, Ethan noticed more changes in Liara. She was becoming stronger, and her body was adapting to the human blood he had given her. But there were other effects as well. Sometimes he would feel her emotions as if they were his own, her fear, her curiosity, even her moments of joy. It was a strange and powerful connection, one that made him both exhilarated and cautious. He also began to notice changes in himself. His senses felt sharper when he was near her, and he could anticipate her movements almost instinctively. It was as if the bond they shared had given him abilities he had never known. At first it was subtle, a faster reaction, a clearer focus, but over time the effects became more pronounced. He realized that the transfusion had done more than save her life. It had created a connection that was mutual, linking them in ways neither of them fully understood. Liara, too, seemed aware of the connection. She would reach for him, lightly touching his arm or hand, and he could feel a pulse of energy in response. It was not only comforting, but also reassuring. They were learning to communicate without words, understanding each other through feelings and gestures. It was a form of trust that transcended language, and Ethan realized how rare and valuable it was. But the peace in the cavern could not last forever. One evening, as the team prepared a small meal, sensors detected movement near the entrance. Ethan and Lena quickly armed themselves, and Liara's eyes widened with recognition. The pursuers had found them. They were faster and more numerous than before, and they were closing in. Ethan moved instinctively, guiding Liara deeper into the cavern system. He could feel her tension, and it fueled his determination. The bond between them was stronger than ever, and he knew that he could protect her if he remained focused and calm. He whispered words of reassurance, and she responded with small gestures of trust, leaning closer to him as they moved. The pursuers entered the cavern cautiously, scanning the area. Ethan and the team held their breath, hiding behind rocks and shadows. Liara stayed close, her hand gripping his tightly. He could feel her heart beating, and in response he felt his own pulse synchronize with hers. It was a strange and powerful sensation, one that gave him strength and clarity in the face of danger. Hours passed, and the pursuers eventually left, unable to find them in the winding cavern system. Ethan exhaled slowly, feeling a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Liara's grip on his hand relaxed slightly, and he could see the faint glow of her skin dimming as she rested. They had survived the immediate danger, but the threat was far from over. During the quiet moments that followed, Ethan reflected on everything that had happened. Saving Liara had been an act of courage, but it had also created a bond that neither of them fully understood. They were linked in ways that went beyond life and death, and that connection had become a source of strength and trust. He realized that their journey was no longer just about survival. It was about understanding each other, learning to navigate the challenges of a world that was foreign to both of them, and preparing for the dangers that were sure to come. The bond between human and alien was growing stronger, and Ethan knew that it would be the key to facing whatever lay ahead. As night fell once again on Zithera, Ethan and Liara sat together in the cavern, their hands lightly touching. The stars outside shimmered in alien patterns, and the desert winds whispered faintly through the cavern openings. For a brief moment, the world felt still, and Ethan allowed himself to believe that they could face any challenge as long as they were together. But deep in the desert beyond the cavern, shadows moved, and the search for the princess continued. Ethan knew that this was only the beginning. The bond they shared had saved her once, but the future held new dangers, new discoveries, and new challenges that would test them both in ways they could not yet imagine. Ethan tightened his grip on Liara's hand, feeling the pulse of life and energy that connected them. He had given his blood to save her, and in return she had given him a connection that was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Together, they would face the unknown, relying on trust, courage, and the bond that had grown between them in the heart of an alien desert. And for the first time, Ethan realized that this bond was more than just survival. It was the beginning of something far greater, something that could change both of their lives forever. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Ethan and Liara moved carefully across the desert, aware that alien factions might be searching for them. But now, they were no longer merely fleeing. They were planning, preparing, and understanding the stakes. Ethan could sense Liara's determination through their bond, and it gave him courage. He knew that whatever lay ahead, they were stronger together than apart. Their connection continued to deepen. Ethan could feel her thoughts, sometimes in brief flashes, sometimes as a gentle current that guided his own actions. He had learned to interpret her gestures, her subtle expressions, and the pulses of energy that passed between them. Liara, in turn, seemed to understand him instinctively, following his lead and trusting his decisions even when the path ahead was unclear. One day, as they traversed a canyon filled with strange crystal formations, they encountered a small group of Liara's people. The humans would have been easily spotted, But Ethan and Liara had learned to move with stealth and caution. They observed the group from a distance, noting their behavior and equipment. These were not the scouts who had pursued them. They were emissaries, sent to negotiate or assess the situation. Liara's violet eyes met Ethan's. Through their bond, he sensed her conflicted emotions, curiosity, relief, and lingering fear. She had recognized them, yet she was cautious. Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, and the subtle energy that passed between them seemed to communicate trust, patience, and understanding. They approached carefully, keeping their hands visible and avoiding any sudden movements. The emissaries stopped, surprised but not hostile. One stepped forward, speaking in Liara's language. Though Ethan could not understand the words, he felt the warmth and respect in their tone. Liara responded, speaking slowly and clearly, gesturing toward Ethan and the humans. The emissaries observed Ethan closely, then turned to Liara, listening intently. It was clear that she had explained their connection and the events that had led to their meeting. Ethan watched, fascinated, as the emissaries' expressions shifted from suspicion to acknowledgement. They had come seeking the princess, and now they saw that she was safe, protected by someone who had risked his own life for her. The negotiations were tense, but peaceful. Ethan could sense Liara's pride in her people and her gratitude for his protection. Through their bond, he felt her relief, her joy, and her determination. He realized that the transfusion had created not only a physical connection, but also an emotional and spiritual one. They were bound together in ways that neither fully understood, but both trusted implicitly. Over the next days, the humans and Liara's people worked together. They repaired her injuries fully, shared knowledge about the desert and its dangers, and planned for the challenges that lay ahead. Ethan continued to stay close to Liara, guiding her, supporting her, and learning from her in equal measure. Their bond had become a source of strength for both of them, a living testament to trust, courage, and the power of compassion. Finally, the moment came when Liara was ready to return to her people fully. Ethan walked beside her as they approached her home, the palace rising like a jewel against the desert horizon. Her subjects watched with awe and respect, recognizing both her resilience and the bond she shared with the human who had saved her life. Ethan could feel Liara's pride and nervousness, her emotions passing to him in a wave of energy that filled him with both joy and responsibility. As they reached the palace gates, Liara turned to Ethan. Their hands touched, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Through their bond, they shared understanding, gratitude, and unspoken promises. Ethan knew that this was not the end. It was a beginning. They had survived danger, forged a connection that transcended species, and discovered a trust that could withstand any challenge. The gates opened and Liara stepped inside, her head held high. Ethan followed briefly, then stepped back, knowing that she belonged to her people now. But he also knew that their bond would never be broken. No matter the distance, no matter the challenges, they were connected in ways that could never be undone. That night under the alien stars, Ethan reflected on the journey. He had given his blood to save a princess, and in return, he had gained a connection that changed his life forever. Liara had trusted him with her life, and he had honored that trust. Together they had faced danger, discovered the strength of their bond, and built a foundation for a future that neither could have imagined alone. And somewhere deep in the desert, Ethan felt a quiet certainty. The story of the human and the alien princess was far from over. Their lives were intertwined, and the bond they shared would guide them through whatever came next. Adventures, challenges, and discoveries that would shape not only their destinies, but perhaps the destiny of two worlds.